Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. As such, this channel is not afraid to challenge existing beliefs and facts in order to contribute to the advancement of knowledge. This presentation is titled The Multidimensional Nature of Personality Development in Ijaw Psychology, a discourse. This is the national flag of the Ijaw Nation. The purpose of this presentation is to describe the types of social personality development characteristics in Ijaw psychology. To achieve the goal of the presentation, the following arguments are made. 1. Quite often, psychology is offered on college campuses as a body of universalized scientific knowledge that is applicable equally to all human beings, regardless of societal differences. It is much more appropriate to say that psychological behavior and effects are greatly influenced by the cultural environment. 2. In the Western world, a unidimensional cultural worldview driven by scientific thought seems to be perpetuated through socialization, while in African societies, particularly in Ijaw land, a dualistic conceptualization of the world seems to be perpetuated. 3. Due to cultural differences, it is not an overstatement to say that Western psychology is quite different from Ijaw psychology. 4. The Ijaws seems to prefer a multidimensional personality where an individual can fit into or play different social roles in society. 5. Due to the preference for a multidimensional personality, an Ijaw person can display different psychological personality characteristics depending on the circumstances. Thus, the need for individuals to play multiple roles and multitask in society is responsible for the impartment of social intelligence and emotional intelligence in the socialization process in Ijaw society. Now, what is psychology? Benjamin Ley defines psychology as the, and I quote, science of behavior and mental processes, and I unquote. Based on this definition, psychologists attempt to carry out carefully controlled observations of human behavior. Behavior is the observable overt actions of individuals, while mental processes are the private thoughts, feelings, emotions, and motives that cannot be directly observed. So those two combinations make up psychology. Modern psychology is a complex and multifaceted discipline. The various subfields in psychology include 1. Biological psychology, 2. Sensation and perception, 3. Learning and memory, 4. Cognition, 5. Developmental psychology, 6. Motivation and emotion, 7. Personality, 8. Social psychology, 9. Sociocultural psychology, and 10. Applied psychology. Applied psychology is subdivided into A. Clinical psychology, B. Counseling psychology, C. Industrial organizational psychology, D. Educational and school psychology, and E. Health psychology. Ijaw psychology. Based on the arguments above, it is appropriate to say that Ijaw approach to psychology is quite different from the Western orientation. In Western cultural orientation, psychology is separated from other components of human nature and treated as a separate discipline. Although it is related to biology, the nervous system, religion, family, society, and belief systems that lead to perceptions of psychological normality or abnormality, it is differentiated. In Ijaw land, there seems to be no clear separation between psychology and other related health fields, since it is believed that a physical problem can manifest into a psychological problem, and a psychological problem can manifest into a spiritual problem, and vice versa, to affect human behavior. Moreover, individual behavior is connected to family, community, and group behavior. Thus, psychological behavior in Ijaw land cannot be individualized to the extent that Western psychology is noted for. Apparently, to deal with the psychological component, the physical and spiritual components too must be treated to create a balance. The Ijaw seek a balance between the physical and spiritual components of human nature. They do so based upon the belief that humans have a dual nature. The spiritual component is characterized by the non-physical intuition, spiritual, and soul, and the physical component is characterized by the material object of the body. Both combine to affect and influence human behavior. So in Ijaw society, both the spiritual component of nature and the physical component of nature affects psychological behavior. For instance, if an Ijaw violates one of the sacred rules, that is, engages in abominable act, the individual is going to be restless until he or she does something to ameliorate the act, regardless of education or wealth. On the other hand, in the West, such stress might not take place because of the emphasis on the scientific approach to the study of psychology. Apparently, to reinforce the understanding of the subject of discussion, it is necessary to briefly refer to two important concepts in psychology. There are 1. Developmental psychology, 2. Personality psychology. These were already mentioned as part of the psychological subfields, but because of this presentation, it might be necessary to look into them before going further. These two terms are connected in the presentation here to focus on the development of social personality characteristics. So, what is developmental psychology? In developmental psychology, development refers to certain changes that occur in human beings or animals between conception and death. Therefore, changes in development focus on those characteristics that appear in an orderly manner and remain for a considerable time. For instance, the stages of development as originally categorized by Jean Piaget included 1. The sensorimotor stage, ranging from birth to 2. The pre-operational stage, ranging from ages 2 to 7. 3. The concrete stage ranging from 7 to 12. And the formal stage which ranges from age 12 through adulthood. What is developmental psychology? While the 4 stages of development are acknowledged here, as discussed earlier, it is also a fact that human development involves physical, personal, social, and cognitive elements. Physical development deals with changes in the body as the individual grows. Personal development deals with changes in the personality of the individual as the person grows. Social development deals with how the individual relates to others. Cognitive development focuses on changes in thinking as the individual grows up. So, what is personality psychology? Personality psychology looks at the recognizable patterns of consistent behavior that characterizes an individual. This is more like a profiling of a person's behavior. The Ijaws tend to cultivate a personality that is down to earth, forthright, humble, communalistic, and nationalistic. To ensure the communalistic orientation of individual behavior, virtues that encourage respect for elders, ancestors, and the community, respect for traditions, forthrightness, humility, and hard work are encouraged through socialization. In this regard, individual psychology is interwoven with the psychology of the family and the community. Let's look at the Ijaw multidimensional social personality development process. Without necessarily going into the technical details of the development stages, it is important to discuss how the Ijaws raise their children. This means paying particular attention to social factors that contribute to developmental psychology. As soon as a child is born, he or she is introduced to the world through traditional religious and/or Christian rituals, which pay homage to the ancestors and God for making it possible for the child to be born. The most basic form of this ritual is the pouring of libation and offering of prayers. Then those assembled at the family gathering to receive the child drink to the childbirth. The child goes through the following processes depending on the circumstances. 1. If a careful examination of the child reveals no physical or spiritual abnormality, the child is made to grow up through the normal social process of child raising. 2. If physical or spiritual abnormality is detected, effort is made through recourse to traditional healers and scientific doctors, depending on the special needs of the child. The purpose of the consultation is to remove or eradicate the abnormality if it is possible to do so. 3. The child is also examined to detect any body mark that is associated with a deceased family member in order to determine whether the child is a reincarnated member of the family. 4. Children are purposely trained and socialized to develop depth of character so that they can deal with people and situations in various ways without experiencing psychological stress as a result of trying to adjust their behaviors. This is possible because Ijaw children, like many children in Africa, are raised by groups of people rather than by one or two parents. It appears that in the West, since most children are raised in nuclear families, their depth of character is reduced and the ability to deal with situations is minimized. 5. In Ijaw land, depth of character is developed to enable individuals have self-control and cope with unforeseen circumstances. Therefore, a very quiet person can turn out to be the most ferocious fighter depending on the situation. And 6. Consequently, children are raised to develop interpersonal characteristics that will make them resourceful in dealing with people and situations in life. Hence the preference for a multi-dimensional personality characteristics. In particular, children are raised to develop the following personal characteristics. 1. A personality to reinforce individual qualities. 2. A personality that reinforces identification and attachment to the family. 3. A personality that reinforces identification and attachment to the community. 4. A personality that reinforces identification and attachment to the ancestors. 5. A humble personality that relates to seniors and elders. 6. A personality that reinforces identification with peers. 7. A personality to deal with juniors. And 8. A personality of assertiveness to deal with aggressive and threatening situations. So let's go step by step and see how these characteristics takes place. 1. A personality to reinforce individual qualities. The nuclear and extended families often work together to ensure that the unique qualities of each child are reinforced. This is done through careful observation of a child as soon as he or she is born. Due to the communal culture, every adult in the family is expected to serve as a psychologist in some fashion by carefully observing and analyzing the behavior of a newborn. At each stage of the child's growth, extended family members on both sides of the family meet regularly to analyze the child. If the child talks too much, the family members may begin to create a psychological profile indicating that the child might be suitable to pursue a degree in law or become a politician when he or she grows up. 2. A personality that reinforces identification and attachment to the family. Ijaw parents and families raise their children to embrace the communal system. The process begins from the moment a child begins to be aware of his surroundings or environment. Bonding to the family and the group is made in various ways. The mother creates both physical and spiritual bonds by carrying the child in her arms rather than using trolleys and carts. The child is generally carried and taken care of by other members of the extended family whenever the child needs attention. Thus, every adult contributes one way or another to raising the child. Almost every child is breastfed by the mother and any other woman in the family that can produce or provide breast milk. Breastfeeding creates a strong bond between the mother and the child. However, if breastfeeding is not possible, then baby formula becomes the means to feed the baby. The child is made to play with other children in the family. Quite often, the child is told to go and play with your brothers and sisters. These brothers and sisters include cousins, distant relatives, and children of the larger extended family. This is to create a communal bond. Three, a personality that reinforces identification and attachment to the community. Although a child belongs to a particular nuclear family, nevertheless, he or she is made to feel like being part of a much larger community, since almost everyone who is connected to any village or town shares a certain degree of kinship with others in the same village or town. The individual does not only identify with the immediate nuclear and extended families, but is also permanently attached to his or her village or town of origin. Consequently, the individual can be rewarded or punished by the nuclear family, the extended family, and the whole town or village, depending on the degree of misbehavior or deed. As a result, quite often, the hometown or home village also serves as a motivating factor to enable individuals to achieve success. Since the individual is connected to the whole community through kinship, if anything happens, an entire town or village can get involved in a matter that is related to the son or daughter of a particular family in the community. Here in this picture, you have a gathering of Ijaw people singing, dancing, and people in a symbolic canoe. Because for the Ijaws, social gathering is very, very important. 4. A personality that reinforces identification and attachment with the ancestors. As soon as an individual is socialized to identify with the family and the community, he or she is automatically bonded with the ancestors. The reason is that the family and the community are a product of kinship produced by the ancestors. Since people are told regularly that if they uphold spiritual tenets laid down by their ancestors, they will be protected from harm, a strong belief in the capability of the ancestors to protect them exists. This also relates to the Ijaw belief that the Ijaws can foretell the future by communicating with their ancestors. Moreover, since the Ijaws believe in reincarnation, Ijaw psychology is further enhanced by the feeling that the living members of the family are reincarnated ancestors. Thus, no member of the ethnic group, whether an ancestralist, a Christian, or a Muslim, would want to intentionally violate his or her ancestral sacred rules due to the close relationship between the living and the dead. 5. A humbling personality that relates to seniors and elders. Thus, respect for seniors and elders is highly encouraged in Ijaw society. The reason is that the elders follow the ancestors in the line of succession. They serve to perpetuate the ancestral cultural beliefs, values, and traditions. Most often, the elders are the leaders of the extended families and communities, and even the ethnic group. As such, they are imbued with a certain spiritual authority to make decisions that reinforce the family and the community. The elders are also responsible for sanctifying any marriage that involves a family member. Since they are responsible for praying and pouring the family libation to the ancestors, if they issue a curse against any individual, it is believed that the curse will take effect. Hence, the elders must always be respected, regardless of social standing, wealth, or education. It is not acceptable, even for the most educated individual, to disrespect an elder just because the elder is uneducated. That is a no-no in Ijaw society. This picture shows some Ijaw elders. So Ijaw elders are highly respected. Six, a personality that reinforces identification with peers. Since children are raised and socialized to grow according to age sets, individuals also develop personalities that bond very well with their age groups. This is very important since many social activities are organized according to age sets. For instance, wrestling matches, initiation into sacred warrior and masquerade societies, burial rites, and so on are carried out mostly through age groups. Due to this factor, it is very easy for Ijaw youths to organize themselves into a fighting force if the need arises. As soon as a leader of an age group sets the agenda for action, other youths of the same age group are likely to join the effort. Similarly, if a community is threatened, an age group can spur the entire community to action. As soon as an age group sets the action in motion, almost all members of that age group are likely to join the effort to defend the community. If a member of an age group misbehaves, it is probably the members of the person's age group that might begin to castigate the individual even before the family gets involved. This picture shows how Ijaw youths can easily be organized to protest or demonstrate in order to bring attention to issues that concern the Ijaw nation. Due to the age group culture, it is very easy to mobilize the youth in Ijaw land. 7. A personality to deal with juniors. A personality developed to psychologically deal with juniors is also reinforced. Every Ijaw person is socialized to become a mentor and act like a leader to those below his or her age. This requires developing an authoritative and assertive personality that enables an individual to play the role of a parent, an uncle or aunt, or a big sister or brother. Hence, an older individual is always expected to use commanding language while communicating with those below his or her age. This is to ensure that the younger person respects the authority of the older person and listens attentively when being addressed. To succeed in gaining the respect of the younger person, however, the older person must make sure that he or she behaves according to the expectations of his or her age. Otherwise, the person might not be respected. And 8, a personality of assertiveness to deal with aggressive and threatening situations. Through extensive socialization, the Ijaws generally display an outward appearance of humility and passivity. Those who are not familiar with the culture could easily assume that the members of the ethnic group have low self-esteem, are very passive, and are unsophisticated, and therefore easily controllable and exploitable. Underneath the outward appearance of humility and passivity, however, is another quality that enables them to roar like lions. They can move from a psychological state of passivity to a very assertive level in an instant, thereby confusing a stranger or an outsider. Since every Ijaw person is trained and socialized to become a leader, if the individual feels deceived or cheated or exploited or tricked, the person can react very assertively. If that happens, the suspected cheater or exploiter must accept responsibility, admit the bad behavior, and promise not to repeat the act again. Here you have a ceremonial war canoe, which symbolizes Ijaw ability to assert themselves if necessary. This is another picture of where Ijaw youths mobilize themselves for action. So you see, an Ijaw person can look very humble and passive, but that same person can turn 360 degrees and become very assertive. Due to the multidimensional process for socialization of the members to develop various personalities. Conclusion. The following observations are made. 1. Indeed, Western psychology is different from African psychology, particularly that of the Ijaw nation. Western psychology seems to focus more on individual behavior, while Ijaw psychology tends to reinforce group behavior, hence the multidimensional development of personality. 2. Thus, the cultural environment plays a crucial role in influencing psychological behavior. As a result, the same psychological standard cannot and should not be applied across the board to people in different cultures. 3. Unlike the West, which seems to prefer a unidimensional personality characteristic, the Ijaws seem to prefer a multi-dimensional personality characteristics or traits. This is to ensure that the individual can play many roles and multitask without facing undue psychological problems. Multidimensional social personality development equips the individual with essential skills, including social intelligence and emotional intelligence, to function in a just society. 4. Due to a preference for a multi-dimensional personality, the Ijaw man or woman can change from being humble and passive to becoming very assertive, depending on the circumstances, without going through psychological stress. An individual who is secularized in attitude can change to become very tradition-oriented. Thus, an individual is expected to display different psychological behaviors at different times. Hence, an individual who appears to be submissive and passive to an elder to show respect is expected to be assertive when dealing with his or her juniors. On the other hand, the individual is expected to be interactive at the same level with his or her age mates. Regardless of the level of education, reverence for the elders and the ancestors remain very high in the Ijaw society. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please subscribe to the channel and listen to other informative presentations.